The other day I posted a story time about an email from someone named Lee who claimed that they met a non-human entity who was wearing an ill-fitting skin suit in a truck stop diner in between Louisville and Indianapolis. A lot of people had questions, naturally. If you're new here, Spooky Scary Storytime is a series where I share allegedly true, listener-submitted stories about the creepiest or most unbelievable things that have ever happened to them. Long story short, this entity revealed to Lee that it was not from here and that it was here to study humans. Upon departing, this entity told Lee, "We will meet again." Lee said, "How will I know it's you?" The entity said, "What's your favorite quote? I'll recite that quote to you and then you'll know it's me." That story left off with Lee then being at a bar in a different country years later, alone, when a person came up, sat next to them at the bar, and recited that same quote. He read your comments and is addressing the questions that you all asked. So this happened almost 10 years later. I was living in Korea teaching English, and it had been years, obviously, since this first exchange happened. And although Lee thought it was very strange at the time, she didn't really expect to ever encounter this person or this non-human entity again, right? She's out one night just having a little drink at the bar by herself, unwinding, when this person slides up next to her at the bar, looks her in the face, and recites this quote without saying anything else. And she said she looked at this person, and even though this didn't look the same as this being that she met years ago at the diner, this sense of familiarity just kind of washed over her, and all those memories from that night came flooding back. She said this person did not look at all like the person that she met at the diner. And this time, the skin suit was not ill-fitting. It looked like a regular person. She's just staring at this person, trying to figure out if this really is the same being that she met, because she's having this energetic sensation that this is familiar, that she knows this person. So she doesn't really say anything. She's just staring at, and this being says, "Do you remember me?" Lee says, "Yes." And so the being says, "I can't stay long tonight, but will you meet up with me tomorrow?" Lee says yes, and they make plans for Lee to take them on a little tour of the town. Next day when they met up, Lee said that this being said that they connected with her because she was open, she's trustworthy, and she's available to hear things that others cannot. To make an example of it, he points at a random person and says, "That person would be completely freaked out if he knew what you know." So Lee is starting to feel more comfortable, even though she really can't believe what she's hearing, and knows that this is not the same person physically that she met at the diner, but this person seems to know all about that conversation that they had. And she starts asking more questions. She's like, "How long have you been here?" And this being tells her, "Well, when I first met you, I was very new to this planet." Lee said that she figured out that that's probably why the skin suit that it initially wore looked so weird. Being now seemed to have a better grasp on appearing human. Lee says, "Okay, well, where do you get the suits from?" She's like, "Do you use people that are no longer alive? Do you use people that nobody would know who they are?" And to this question, the being just told her that it was a very complicated answer and that they weren't really at liberty to say. And Lee was fine with that because she said she probably really didn't want to know the answer anyway. First time they met, she had asked this being where it was from, and it had just said not from here, but she asked again, and this time it gave her a very complicated answer full of science equations and complex mathematical formulas that she said she really just didn't even have the brain capacity to understand. So she asked, "Well, how did you get here?" And it just says technology, and she's like, "A wormhole?" And he says, "You can think of it like that, but not really." He asked if his species liked us, liked humans. And he said, "Yes, very much, even when you make decisions that go against your own best interests." But that is why they're here, to understand why we do those things. He asked about his home civilization, if he's allowed to go home, and he said no, he's just here to report back. He volunteers for this, and at the end of this project, he will no longer exist. She said, "Well, the first time I met you, you said that you could be here for 100 years. So is that all the time you get?" And he said, "Well, I could have more time if I ask for it." Says, "Do you think you're going to ask for more time?" And he says, "I don't know. I find you very frustrating sometimes." That this conversation lasted maybe a few hours as they walked around. He was very fascinated with Korea and all the things that she was showing him. At the end, he left very abruptly without very much of a goodbye. Years later, she's working in Australia and she comes across him again, and they were both surprised to see each other. And this being just tells her, "Not now." She saw him once more in Algeria last year. This time, the being was in female form, and she came up to Lee and she whispered the quote. Said they didn't yet to have much of an exchange because it was a professional setting and this person was ranked very high in the organization in which they were working. Said, "I have no idea how they ended up there, but I would love to meet up again, obviously, and ask some questions, but we don't meet up like on a schedule, on an anniversary. There's no rhyme or reason to it." Said, "Every time I have encountered this being, it's been in a completely random setting. Every time I encounter them, I feel both thrilled and freaked out that they're still here." As I said in the last video, Lee does not want to be named or tagged, but she does read the comments. That's how I got all this information, because we've been going back and forth in emails. So that's all I got for you guys. If you have a story that you think nobody else would believe, send it in. We would love to hear it.
I always warn y'all, stop doing love spells on people. Imagine you do a love spell on a man and you become obsessed. I am back with another spooky story. We're gonna call the person who submitted the story Kalia. So Kalia says, please don't use my name. I am embarrassed, ashamed, and honestly still dealing with the consequences of this. But she knows she needs to get this off her chest because she doesn't want anyone else doing what she did. So she was with her boyfriend for 8.5 years. 8 long years. They weren't perfect, but they loved each other. At least Kalia thought so. But the last few years he started changing, like going out more, hiding his phone, lying about where he's sleeping. Kalia actually caught him cheating twice. Kalia says even though it destroyed her, she stayed because she thought she couldn't live without him. He wasn't just a boyfriend to her anymore. Again, this is 8.5 years. This is her comfort, her routine, her home. She said that the fear of losing him felt worse than the pain of staying. But one night after a terrible argument where he blamed her for cheating, he did something desperate, something stupid. He tried a love spell. Kalia said, I didn't want to get him. I already had him. I wanted him to stop cheating. I wanted him to want me the way he used to. So she found a spell on TikTok, actually. She told me the spell, but I'm not gonna tell y'all the spell because... So she does the spell, and to ensure it worked, she begged the universe, ancestors, spirits, whoever was listening to make him love her again. But the flame kept flickering as if something was breathing onto the candle. Anyway, ritual done, blows out the candle, goes to sleep. Well, Kalia would unfortunately soon find out that the spell didn't bind him. It binded her. The next morning, he acted normal. Too normal. The next day, Kalia starts to feel like something is happening to her. Her chest physically starts to hurt if she's away from him for too long. Her stomach would twist as if she was starving when he didn't text her back. Her limbs literally shook when he went out without her. It was like she was going through withdrawals without this man. Like she would cry out of nowhere, get these mood swings, get fevers out of nowhere. No, it didn't stop the cheating. So at this point, she's obsessed. He's still cheating. So she's like, what the fuck? I want to leave him. She said just the thought of breaking up with him would make her hands go numb. She felt sick without him, like physically sick. It is as though her body was addicted to his presence. It is as though he wasn't the one being controlled. She was. And it unfortunately got worse every day. She lost weight, she stopped eating. She couldn't sleep unless his arm was physically touching her. She would wake up to panic attacks. And she said that it didn't feel like love anymore. It felt like she was encaged inside of her own body. They argued again, and that night he decided to stay at a friend's house. And Kalia said she swore she almost died. Her chest tightened so hard that she collapsed on the floor. Literally couldn't breathe and her vision became blurry. She was shaking on the ground, having a panic attack. She said the worst part wasn't the physical pain. It was what she heard in that moment. She heard a whisper past her ear, now you can never let go. And in that moment, Kalia realized the spell didn't stop him from cheating. It didn't make him love her. It didn't protect her. It made her obsessed, dependent, bound to someone who just simply didn't love her back. He wasn't a prisoner. She was. And that's when she understood that whatever spell she did attached itself to her heart and not his. And she wants y'all to know it is not worth it. Do not buy a man's love, no matter how cheap it may be. Now, if you want to hear a part 2 about how she got out, spoiler alert, it took years and blood. So spooky. So if you want me to do a part 2, go ahead and leave a comment for part 2. For now, I love you, my abducted humans, from your favorite Haitian homegirl. Oh, and make sure you follow me and subscribe to my YouTube channel for longer, better, and spookier stories.
If you have a fear of the ocean or any type of body of water, you may not want to watch this video. So this girl named Katie was fishing in Mayport with her boyfriend last August around 9:30 p.m. They were on a bank in an area where the water feeds from the intercoastal waters into the ocean. At this point, they're about mid-calf deep in the water, so they're in the water right now. They said that the waterway was flowing pretty fast towards the water that leads to the ocean, when suddenly they're standing there and they see this swell. And then they see something rising up out of the water, and they realize it's this large head. She said that its head was huge. And mind you, they are only about 5 feet away from this thing. And she said that the eyes had slits in them. The eyes were huge and had slits in them like a snake. So they're staring at this thing in complete shock when suddenly it starts lifting itself up out of the water. So now they're seeing more of it. Katie describes it as it had these big, large loops that were taller than her body. She said it was as big as a tree trunk and probably 30 to 40 feet long. She said it also had scales scales that were the size of an appetizer plate and round. She said it also had long spikes coming out of its back, and on top of its head looked like what she can only describe as a sea fan coral. She said it looked like a whole dragon, and it did not swim side to side either like a snake. It swam up and down going forward in those loops. She said it was moving fast with the current, and she thinks that the only reason why they saw it is because it was too shallow for it to be submerged. She said eventually it just got further out into the water, and then eventually it just disappeared, and she just stood there in absolute shock and fear of saying anything, so she didn't speak. She also didn't want to sound crazy, but then her boyfriend looked over at her, and his eyes were wide and mouth like gaped open in disbelief, like, what did we just see? So then her boyfriend goes, did you just see that? And she kind of sighs out of relief, but she still doesn't answer out of fear of sounding crazy still. After a short little minute there, she just goes, yeah, I saw a dragon. He just nods his head and goes, that's what I saw too. And that was it. She said that he's one of those people that just ignores anything weird. He doesn't deny weird stuff, but he's definitely not questioning it with the same curiosity. She also said that they have both lived there their entire lives. They have both grown up fishing on that water, and they have never seen anything close to that. She also said that she's super into old and new marine biology books. She used to read them daily growing up. She knows a lot about different aquatic species. She couldn't even find anything on Google, but she never stopped talking about what she saw. She would always refer to it as the dragon. Now, a few months later, she's telling one of her friends about it, and at this point it had sort of become like a party joke, where she would bring up the time she saw the dragon. Well, this time her friend looks at her and she goes, I believe you, because when I was working downtown on the Riverwalk, a woman came up to her and asked her what the giant creature was that was swimming in the St. John's River. She described the same thing that Katie described, and she called it the sea monster. She was so excited that there was another sighting that she started to draw a picture of it while her friend Googled sightings in the area. While they're doing this, their friends are like cracking jokes at them and stuff, and then suddenly her friend goes, did it look like this? And she turns her phone around right at the same time that Katie is done drawing whatever she saw, and they match the two pictures, and the two pictures looked like this and this. So very similar. She said the black and white drawing is from her friend's phone, and the purple sketch is the fast drawing that she did. She said that everybody's jaw just dropped, and that it actually scared one of the girls that was at the party so bad that she ended up leaving. She got up and left. And she said that is how she found out about Johnny, the St. John's River monster. She said apparently there was quite a few sightings of it, and she even found a post online of a kid who said that he saw it when he was younger at the Riverwalk. So what do you guys think about that story? What do you think that was? Has anyone ever heard of this before? This is the first time I've ever heard of it. The only St. John's River that I know about is in St. Augustine. So my family lived there for a while. So, well, my mom did. And I have never heard of it. And I don't know if maybe there's a different St. John's River in a different state. But yeah, that's super creepy. And I will never be going in the ocean ever again in my entire life. So thank you, Katie. I have a huge fear of the ocean. It is one of my biggest fears ever. I do not like being in lakes where I cannot see where the bottom is. It freaks me out so bad. That and alligators are my two bugaboos. I just cannot. And children, ghosts, and you guys know about all the creepy stuff I hate. But not being able to see underneath water or seeing something in the water that is just like that, I would freaked out. I would have been out of that water so fast. But I want to know if anybody has ever heard of this and what you guys think it was. So please drop all your thoughts, opinions, and suggestions in the comment section. But as always, please be respectful.
Let's read some more scary stories that were sent to us. 6 years ago, my family and I moved to South Africa. We moved into my mom's friend's house. It was a small house, and it was also very old. One night, we went to bed just like any other night. I slept next to my mom and my twin brother because the house was very small, and I have 6 siblings, and there were only 2 rooms. So you could imagine we were pretty cramped in there. Anyway, I was laying in bed with my mom and my twin brother one night, and in the middle of the night, I woke up because I had a nightmare. I looked in the corner of my room and I saw myself standing. I wasn't creeped out, I was just confused. It looked exactly like me, but she was creepy. She was looking in my eyes, smiling, and tilting her head in a weird, creepy way. I didn't get too scared very easily when I was younger, so I went back to bed thinking I wouldn't see it again. But then I woke up again and I saw that it's gotten even closer. I closed my eyes, praying it would go away. But I opened my eyes and saw myself again, smiling and tilting my head, and I thought to myself, how is this even possible if I'm in bed? I went back to bed and woke up and saw it again. This time I was so sick of seeing it because I started actually getting scared, so I stood up really fast and ran towards it, and then it just disappeared. When it disappeared, I heard the cupboard next to the bed shake. I quickly jumped into my bed and hid under the covers, and I fell back asleep. I was so scared the next morning. A few years later, me and my siblings were talking about the house, and I told them about my experience, and I thought I was the only one experiencing all of this paranormal stuff, only to find out all of them were experiencing it too, but they didn't want to speak about it because they were also scared. My older brother and my oldest sister were telling me how they were in the garage one time and they heard stuff moving, but they were the only ones in there. My oldest sister also said she felt like someone was watching her in that house. And one time, I went to the kitchen to make my twin brother's cereal, and while I was pouring the cereal into a bowl, I heard a little girl talk in my ear. I got so scared and ran to my room, but my brother begged me to go back. So I went back, and then she spoke into my ear again, and I ran right back to my room. My mom later invited some nuns to the house, and they told her that there was an evil presence there. I'm so glad we finally moved out. South Africa, y'all. There's something evil over there. This next story happened in Minnesota. This happened about 5 years ago, so I was around 10 at the time. I was living at my great uncle's house with my mom, brother, and dad. We lived right next door to my grandma and grandpa's house, so we would frequently go over there. One night, I was home alone as my family was over at my grandparents' house having a bonfire. I fell asleep, but soon after woke up, looked over, and saw my brother standing in my room. He was standing in front of the window looking outside. My window faced the driveway of our house, and I couldn't see anything that he could be looking at. I got annoyed with him and called out to him to ask him what he was doing, but got no response. I got out of bed and walked over to him to confront him. Once I got right behind him, I went to reach out and grab his shoulder, but my hand went right through him. All I felt was cold air, and then he faded until I was standing there alone. I jumped when I heard a four-wheeler take off. I looked out my window and saw someone exiting the driveway on a four-wheeler. I got really scared and jumped back into my bed and crawled under the blankets. I lied there for a while until I heard talking outside my door. I quickly jumped up and ran out of my room to find my mom getting home with my brother. I asked her if my brother had been in my room messing with me, but she told me that they just got back and our neighbor had just dropped them off on her four-wheeler. To this day, I have no idea what was in my room pretending to be my brother. Alright, y'all, this next one is in South Africa. When I was a kid, I lived in a small town in the Transvaal. Basically, what happened was something evil lived in the house with us. It scared everyone at night specifically. I think it lived in the dark because it would never do anything in the light. We had a pet ringneck named John, and he would swear at us but never speak. One night he started laughing like crazy, and it woke my mom up at 1 a.m. My mom turned on the light and went to cover the bird's cage with a blanket, and it went silent. She turned off the light and was walking back to her room when she walked past a man who she just thought was my dad. She climbed into bed and realized my dad was in bed sleeping. After a while, she fell back asleep and woke up to my dad kicking the bedside table to splinters while he was asleep. He ended up breaking his foot. Days later, I became the target. I was small, so I don't remember too much, but I remember running to my parents' room almost every night out of fear. Something would tell me to stop running away or it would eat my feet. I had scratches all over my body after night terrors, and I would sleepwalk and wake up in strange places around our house. Our dogs also started refusing to come inside and would only sleep outside. After living in that house for 3 years, I'm traumatized. I slept next to my parents' bed until I was 12. I'm currently 22 and it still follows me, and I can absolutely never be in dark places alone. I don't like talking about it because I feel like it knows when I do. And this person is looking for some advice on how to get that evil away from them. I told them maybe talk to a medium, but if y'all have better advice, leave it in the comments.
Going alone to a place you don't know gotta be one of the worst things that you can do. And if you're like, bro, what if I want to enjoy life and discover things? Oh, that's wholesome and beautiful, but you're gonna change your mind after listening to this story. It all started one day on October when a young woman wanted to spend a week in a remote cabin in the middle of the forest. A remote cabin is basically one of those big-ass wooden houses in the middle of the forest, okay? And the woman wanted to spend a week here because she was tired of the city. She wanted to reflect, live in nature, all that stuff. So she found one for a reasonable price, and then she decided to talk with the owner. She was like, bro, I need to rent this thing starting from next week. So the owner responded, okay, that's possible, but why not now? Bro, check your fucking schedule. There's already people there who have rent this thing for a week. That's why I'm coming after them, a week later. Oh, about that, unfortunately, they decided to cancel the whole thing in the last minute. So if you want to, you can go right now. Okay, that's weird. But you know what? Hell yeah, it's even better. So give me the keys. Unfortunately, that wouldn't be impossible. You will have to wait until the afternoon because we have to clean. Bro, you just told me that nobody has been there. Clean what? We have to clean, don't worry. It's like a professional stuff, don't worry about it. You will get your keys, don't worry. Just wait in a place that's not very far from here, and then you will get your keys. I guess, okay. So the afternoon came, the woman got her keys, and by the time she organized everything, it was already dark outside. So she decided to chill, sit on her bed, and practice her favorite hobby, which was writing. While admiring the view, she was basically writing something like, "Dear nature, from the day I left the city, so many bamboozling, extravagant feelings have been tingling my..." You see, while she was writing, she heard a knocking on a window that's on the other side of the house. So she got up and decided to check what was that. And on her way to that window, boom, every light stopped working. Every single one of them went down. This is where she started to panic but tried to reassure herself. She was like, okay, that tapping, the knocking on the window, it's probably some branch. I mean, think about it. We're in nature, we're surrounded by trees, so that's some branch, okay? When it comes to electricity, something went down, something is wrong, but I will find a way to fix it. So she forgot about that window for a second and she started looking for a solution. How to get the lights back on. That was her main goal. And while doing that, she heard the knocking again. This is where the woman understood that this is not a coincidence or nature or whatever. Somebody is clearly messing with the house from the outside. I mean, no need to tell you how cooked she is. She's in a place that she doesn't know, and somebody who also she doesn't know is messing with the house and trying to get in. Even though she panicked and didn't know what to do at first, she finally decided to act and do something about it. She barricaded every door and every window and decided to wait until morning comes. Even though the knocking kept going around the house, she was like, bro, you can knock until you have no fingers. I am not stopping, I'm barricading everything. And while she was barricading the last window, she noticed a silhouette that was getting further from the house. This is where she understood that that person was doing all this. Now, when morning finally came, the woman called the owner. She was like, okay, first of all, fuck you. Second thing, give me my money back. I'm not staying here anymore. Bro, I just woke up. What are you saying fuck me for? So she explained to him the whole story, but surprised he didn't believe her. Basically thought that she made that story so she can get her money back and then leave. So he was like, look, I'm not giving you anything. Oh, I am telling you the truth. Yesterday was the scariest night of my life. So please give me my money, at least like 50% of it, then I can go. Nah, I'm not giving you anything, you already paid. It's either you stay or you go. Okay, you know what, I'm going. But you know what, on God, I'm calling police first. No, never mind, you can get your money back, I'm sorry, here. Nah, it's too late, I already told you you didn't want to. I'm calling police, you won't need that money in jail, trust me. So she ended up by calling the police, and later that day when they finished investigating, they found out about something really shocking. Now I need you to listen carefully because this is where you're gonna understand the whole story and why it happened. What happened to that woman last night was on purpose and it was all planned by the owner. See, the thing is, the owner is supposed to rent this thing for a week, okay? And the customers are paying for a week. What he does is that at night, he sends somebody to scare them so they can leave immediately. When they leave, they will normally never come back after what they saw. And he will use this to rent it to other people. Basically pretending to rent this thing weekly, but he really does it every day. That is a top-tier scammer. I've never seen something like this in my life. Obviously, the woman got her money back. The guy got arrested, but I don't think that will erase the trauma of the night that she lived. Speaking of trauma, I'm sorry that you guys had to look at this thing for like 4 minutes. I know it's disturbing. I can't help but look at it. I don't know why out of any place it decided to appear here, but hey, life goes on.
Her son remembers his previous life. A mother shares a story from when her son was about 2 years old, and he said something that surprised both her and her husband. He told them that he chose them to be his parents. He goes, First I chose my dad because he had a beard and was kind and funny, and then I chose my mom. She said that at first she just assumed it was a child's fantasy type of thing and kind of forgot about it until he was 3 years old. He goes on to tell them something that completely shocks them. She said they were lying down and relaxing before bed, and then out of nowhere, he said, "It's so nice that I chose you and Dad. It's so wonderful when your parents love you and hug you and kiss you." And then in a really sad tone, he goes, "Everything was wrong before." So she goes along with it and says, "What was it like before?" And he said, "I used to live with someone who wasn't my real mom. She didn't love me at all, and she used to kick me out on the street to beg for food." Now remember, this is a 3-year-old, and I'm gonna keep reading word for word what he said. He continues, "I was very young, walking around in shorts, asking for bread. Sometimes I picked food up off the ground. It was dirty. And I lived near a river where I drank from. We often walked, and she had her own son, and he was older." He goes, "She loved him, but he would hurt me." She asks him, "Where did you live?" And he said, "It was a white stone house." She says, "Can you show it to me?" And he laughed and said, "Mom, it's very far away, and it's gone now." She goes, "Where is your other mom? Would you recognize her?" He goes, "I found out who she was, but she passed away a long time ago." He said, "Her son grew up and became a grandfather, but I didn't get a chance to grow up. I died when I was little, but then I was born to you." She said it's hard to believe that this could be possible, like coming from a 3-year-old. She says she understands that kids can have a wild imagination, but the way that he described certain things in detail was just, I don't know, something else. Such a sad little story, but I'm glad he has loving parents now. What are your thoughts on that? Do you have any reincarnation experiences? Do your children say anything really odd that just kind of makes you wonder? Let me know what you think, and if you have your own creepy story time, I would love to hear it. You can submit it to the email in my bio.
Welcome back to my lore. Here's a story about the time I almost went yachting. This happened in the summer of 2023, so after my scarring music video experience, I was under the impression I was being invited to like a luxury brand trip. So in my DM request, I had a message from this girl she was verified, she had a lot of followers. She looked young, and she said she was a talent coordinator for very high profile, high network clients and brands. And when I went to her profile, it checked out. So obviously you think that's a scam, right? When you first see it. But I looked at her profile and I'm like, oh, she actually has so many followers. She has highlights. Like, this is a real person. She's actually doing what she says. LinkedIn profile, company email in her bio, like everything. She said that she found my Instagram through a modeling page and that a client had reached out to her to reach out to me to go for a really fun weekend in Miami on a yacht. All expenses paid, flight, food. I just had to be there. Kind of thought it was fake still. Like, even though she was real, I was like, why would a private, high net worth like client who's with a very big brand behind the scenes want me to be there? And also keep in mind, I didn't know what yachting was, okay? At the time, I had no idea. So let's continue. So she sends me contracts, NDAs, flight itinerary with real airline numbers. Like, the money was real, the professionalism was real. That's what made it scary, okay? So she told me I was going to be one of 8 girls, all ages 21 through 26. Now, photos of the people that were going to be there were not provided, which I didn't love, like the clients, but she was telling me, you know, like, rich people need their privacy, like, that's why, you just have to trust me. I'm still kind of like, it feels a little weird. And the wording in the contract started to feel weird, because let me tell you what I noticed was not in this contract. Never said modeling, never said appearance fee. What it did say was companionship expectation, flexibility with client needs, and chemistry dependent bonus. So I'm reading through this and I'm like, okay, this is definitely not like a brand deal. This is wording I've never seen in any NDA, any contract. Like, this is very weird. So I responded to her and I was like, what does this mean specifically? Like, those things among a few others. And she replied with a smiley face and she was like, it's just yachting culture, nothing explicit unless you want it to be. First red flag. And she was like, I'm gonna need you to send me like a full body video so our clients can approve of it. Like, wanted me to do a full 360 in a very skinny bikini. She was like, basically just send me a video and like as little clothes as possible, pretty much, and so I can show them because the photos aren't enough. And I'm like, huh? Then she sends me another message and she said, I would suggest packing evening swimwear that is easy to remove. Guys, I'm not kidding, those were her exact words. And I'm like, you know what, like, this is trying to be worded as something, like, very careful about their wording because they're not going to get caught.
but I know now what the vibe is and I'm not doing it. So I told her, you know what, like, never mind, I'm not comfortable. I won't be going on this trip. I was like, I'm not comfortable. I thought this was promotional hosting, and it's very clear to me right now that's not what this is. And then her tone changed and she was completely different with me. She starts getting mad at me and she was like, these clients are paying upward of, I don't remember the number, but she gave me like an estimate, something like 40 to 50K, which that was not. She was like, they are paying for accommodation and not attitude. Word access, something's not adding up. So I go down a deep dive into like Reddit, Google, TikTok, everything, and kind of see what yachting means, and I figured it out, and I'm like, oh my god. That's when I found the crazy forums of, you know, industry yachting, and on Reddit, all these horrific survival horror stories of girls that have gone and things they've seen. I learned all expenses paid means you are the product. That the chemistry bonus, whatever that was, is dependent on what you're willing to do. If you refuse, you don't get paid, or it's forced upon you, if you know what I'm saying. Then I'm like, this is so scary because I'm gonna be on an ocean. Like, there's no Ubers, there's no way for me to get off of this boat once I get on it, and I'm not gonna put myself in this position where I literally can't escape. I can't go anywhere, I can't do anything, I can't call anybody. I'm looking at everything in a different light. I'm rereading the NDA. The details, the way that it's a private driver and I can't get my own driver, the way that I shouldn't tell friends, because she also told me that. Something is just very wrong. Request for my passport photo for travel insurance. I'm realizing if I do this the way they want me to do it and I board that plane legally, like, there's a chance no one will know where I am. So I told her no thank you, I'm not interested, and she sent me a nasty message back and was like, I can have you replaced in 3 minutes. Replace me like I am a seat on a plane. Like I'm just a product, like I'm nothing. So I ended up blocking her. And since then, especially with all of the Diddy stuff coming out and all these scary yachting stories, girls, it is so important to be aware of what you are being invited to and to make sure to read every single thing over. That's all I got for now. Bye.
Jay is a student from Singapore, just 12 years old when this happened. Jay was in 6th grade, stressed about exams, drowning in homework, not particularly interested in ghosts or urban legends. But her friends wouldn't stop talking about the rumors, and every school has them, right? The haunted classroom, the cursed stairwell, the bathroom where something happened once, long ago. And Jay didn't believe any of it until her friends started showing her things. You know, creepy, real things. The 2nd floor wall that thumped and knocked when the hallways were empty, when everyone had gone home. The small weathered headstone hidden in the grass of the sports field that no teacher would explain. So Jay's friends were obsessed with TikTok. They'd watched horror story after horror story, each one more terrifying than the last. And at first these videos kept Jay up at night, but then something changed. You know that feeling when you've been scared so many times that fear starts to feel normal. And that is when they learned about Hanako-san, the ghost of a little girl who died in a bathroom stall during World War II, trapped there forever, and still waiting and still answering when children call her name. And being the investigators they were, they decided to try the summoning ritual themselves. They went after school when most students had already left. The building felt different in the late afternoon. They slowly climbed the stairs to the 3rd floor. No one spoke much. The joke had stopped being funny somewhere around the 2nd floor landing. The 3rd floor bathroom was at the end of a long corridor. Jay pushed the door open. It creaked. Inside, the air felt colder than it should have been. They checked every stall, one by one. Empty, 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 empty. 5 stalls total. The 3rd one was right in the middle, and no one else wanted to do it. So Jay stepped forward. Jay checked the stalls one more time, just to be sure. All empty. Then she closed the door to the 3rd stall. It shut with a soft click that echoed louder than it should have in that tiled space. Jay knocked once, twice, 3 times. Then Jay asked the question. Nothing happened. 5 seconds passed. 10, 15. Jay felt relief starting to bloom in her chest. See? Nothing. It was all just... Then she heard it. A voice. Small, thin, almost too quiet to hear. Like it was coming from very far away, or from something very small. Yes. Then the door moved. Jay's hand was still pressed against it, holding it shut. Something was definitely on the other side. Jay wanted to scream, but couldn't make a sound. Then came the kick. It was a hard kick from inside the stall. "Run!" someone screamed. The girls were already moving, backing away, screaming, stumbling over each other to get to the exit. Behind it, a scraping sound, like something dragging across tile. "Don't look back," someone shouted. The rules said don't look back. But one girl did. She glanced over her shoulder just for a second, just to see what was following them. And the moment she did, she screamed. Her left hand began to bleed. And behind her, Jay saw it too. Dark smoke, thick and black, slipping out from under the bathroom door, reaching toward them like fingers. They ran through the door, gasping, crying, and told the boys everything that happened. And the boys, understandably, they laughed. "We will prove it," one of them said. "We'll go try it ourselves." Jay begged them not to, but teenage boys being teenage boys, they went anyway. Jay and the others waited outside the boys' bathroom, and they could hear them inside, laughing, howling, making jokes. "Hanako-san, are you in there? What are you doing in the men's room?" Then suddenly, silence. "Did they hear anything?" one girl whispered. Before anyone could answer, they heard the boys shouting. Then the lights went out, not just in the bathroom, the entire floor. The boys came crashing out of the bathroom, shoving each other, tripping, desperate to escape. And one of them looked back, just a glance, and he screamed. Suddenly, the boy collapsed, clutching his left arm. His left arm twisted, not broken, no one touched him. It just sprained instantly. Jay stood there in the dark hallway, listening to her classmates scream in pain, watching the bathroom door slowly drift shut on its own. And from inside, so faint they almost didn't hear it, came a sound. A little girl's voice, giggling.
Hello, good morning. Life has been lifing, but let's do a story. Boom boom is story time. Boom boom, paranormal Chicago active with catchy. And yes, I'm finna talk to y'all about the spirits from the Chicago History Museum. Y'all, I said it was gonna be a part 2 or a part 3. I'm sorry. Life be lifing. Y'all, I'm a regular person, okay? Y'all gotta chill out on. I don't think I have ever had a spirit that I sat down with where we was like best friends, just people watching. This was an experience that truly made my brain go, whoa. So in the last video, I was telling y'all how spirit was sending up songs straight to my medulla oblongata so that I can identify certain people in the crowd that he was talking about. And I think the reason why the spirit decided to use songs was because he could not speak in English. I could be wrong, but I think that he was like a Haitian gentleman, a proper gentleman like this, but he looks black. And in my head, the logic is telling me that if he is dressed like this, he looks black, but he cannot speak English, he has to be Haitian. And that tracks so well because I don't know if y'all have had experiences with Haitians, but baby, the way that they can roast your soul. Do not give a reason for a Haitian to turn around and talk about your ass, because baby, they will talk you down. Haitians, don't get me wrong, I love y'all, but y'all be low-key messy as hell. Like, y'all like drama, okay? And all of this put together is giving this ghost man gotta be Haitian and he needed somebody that he could sit back and be petty with. And baby, I am the petty queen. But oh baby, spirit had me, because it was this man that had walked past. And okay, picture that. The Bugs Bunny cartoon, when they was in the opera house and Bugs Bunny was the opera conductor, he was making the big man sing the la 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 him. Okay, I literally hear the fat man doing the opera. I look up and I see the fat man doing the opera, but in Mexican form. And I am in shambles. Oh, I'm sitting up here trying my best to recover from laughing when all of a sudden I hear, "What are those? Damn, Daniel." I look up again. Well, I look down again. There's a woman standing in front of me. Y'all, these shoes. Oh my fucking God. Ladies, I understand the necessity to look good all the time. However, you need to dress accordingly to the weather. If it is 20 degrees outside, you should not have on sandal heels and a spaghetti strap top. You look fucking ridiculous. You look even more ridiculous when you have on a satin spaghetti strap top with your whole back out and some tall ass wedges on. Ain't no way in hell I should see some fucking wicker baskets on your feet in the wintertime. And clearly Spirit agreed. Spirit agreed, because girl, why in the fuck is you wearing 6-inch wedges when it is 7 inches of snow outside? Now, as much fun as I'm having with Spirit, we starting to actually get busy at this event and I gotta focus on what I gotta do. I told Spirit, come back. It's too much going on. I'm overstimulated. I need a break for us. It felt as if something was patting the top of my head. So I knew that he understood where I was coming from, and boom, he walked off from. So the big boss come back and now we talking again, and he's like, yeah, so you really do like ghosts? And I'm like, yeah. As long as they not bad ghosts, I like ghosts. I got a different purpose in life, so you know, the afterlife don't really mess with me. So as he's telling me more stories, he keep on looking over my shoulder. Now I know that he sees something, but I can't feel anything, and I'm like, I don't like that. So I look back, but it wasn't nothing. I looked at him and it was almost as if he was in a trance, and I was like, hey, you okay? He was like, yeah, I'm fine. You know, it'd be weird stuff that happened down here all the time. And I was like, yeah, I know. It's been happening to me all day. He looked at me, he was like, you had a visitor already? I said, yeah, actually I did. He looks back past my shoulder again and he was like, oh, okay. So you got a friend? Yep. Yes, I do. Yes, I do. Big boss man confirmed that I could come back and walk around whenever I want to, right? And of course, it makes me and Mr. Spirit Man happy. Both of us are being overwhelmed with joy at this point. When Big Boss Man walk away, I tell Spirit, I said, so now that means I can come back and sit with you. So I'm going to be back up. From that point on, I guess Spirit was happy with himself and the situation, because he just kind of sat back and he chilled. It was a chair that was sitting off to the side of me, and literally he sat there and just was chilling with me. Every now and then he'll let me know that he was still there because he had hit my ponytail. We got to a point where we were so bored that I just was like just asking random questions. Not necessarily about the spirit or about the museum, just about things in the world in general. And Mr. Spirit Man would hit my ponytail once for yes and twice for no. Every time he did it, it made me giggle. Now, one of the girls that's working with me, she sit back and she see that I'm giggling. She like, what you laughing at? I said, you're not going to believe me if I told you. She said, no, try me. What you laughing at? I said, the spirit keep on making my ponytail move. She said, wait, what? I said, yeah, the spirit, he hitting my ponytail. Like, you know, like a little kid would hit a ponytail, play with it. That's what he doing. In that very moment, she seen my ponytail go. She's sitting there like this. I say, calm down. It's okay. Ain't nothing wrong. She said, girl, what do you mean ain't nothing wrong? It's okay. He cool. You know who he is? I mean, I kind of know who he is, but I don't really know who he is. But I mean, like, I think I'm going to find out who he is when I come back. She's so confused. She's like, what do you mean? What do you mean you're going to find out when you come back? And I'm like, I think that he has to show me who he is. And a part of him is in this museum somewhere. So When I come back, I'll find out who he is. But I mean, I know it's a man and he's nice. So don't trip out. This woman sitting there looking at me as if I just grew 2 extra heads. What really sealed the deal for me was Spirit. I don't know if he possessed these people or what, but they just started throwing tips at us. I felt like a scribbler. I say to myself, it'd be real nice if these people would actually tip us out. I mean, like, first of all, I'm not looking for the tips. Tips is an extra bonus. I don't believe in like a definite tip culture because nobody should have to pay somebody's wage on the back end. It just is what it is. But I do think to myself, like, damn, it'd be nice if these people will come down here and get their stuff and they tip us out. When I tell you people is throwing money at me, this man went in his pocket, pulled out a wad of cash, looked at me and just handed it to me. Like, literally just didn't think about it, didn't check what he was giving me. He didn't know what was wadded up in this ball of money. And I said, sir, you don't want to go through it? He said, no, you deserve it. Okay. 250 people at this event, and damn near every single person tipped us out. That's fucking unheard of. It was 3 of us working for the particular job that we was doing on this catering event. It's not normal for us to get tipped out, okay? But for all 3 of us to walk away with over $100 in tips, what is unheard of? Even one of the girls that was working with me was like, this is crazy. I have never gotten this many tips from working a position like this before. Baby. Woo! Before I left up out that building, I literally put my knees on the ground and bowed my head and said, thank you for a good time. I can't wait to see you again. And I felt that same pat on the top of my head. Like, yeah, I like you too. I wonder if my baby got to work today. I want to take him to this museum. He's starting to see all the freaky shit that happened around me too, and he's starting to like it. Why not see if Mr. Ghost Man approve of him also? Yeah. Ultimate test. As a matter of fact, hell yeah, I'm finna take Bae to this museum because I need Mr. Ghost Bestie to really tell me if he is the right one or not. Who better to ask than somebody from the afterlife? Come on, Mr. Ghost Man, test them!
Scary story time while I make Christmas theme slime. Get your money's worth. Get your money's worth and what? Let it drain. Y'all already know it's been too long. We're gonna be making snow slime, okay? Now, Kylie had an irrational fear of darkness, the woods, anything like that, right? But she would go hiking, she would go on trails, but she would never camp. Her sister August was the opposite of her. She loved camping, she loved darkness, she loved all of that. So one day, August is trying to convince Kylie to go camping, but Kylie not having it. She not rocking with that idea. Especially because August wants to go camping in the middle of freaking nowhere. No internet service, no nothing. She just wants to go remote camping. So both of their birthdays are coming up, but Kylie's birthday is coming up first. So August is like, girl, like, you need to get over this fear. Let's just go camping together. It's not going to be that bad. And so what does she do? She agrees. I hope this activates. Like, I'm praying. Please. Now, Kylie made August promise that they weren't going to go off trail. They were going to stick to the trail and stick to the regular camping grounds. But when they get there, that's not what happens at all. At all. Okay? They have been hiking for hours at this point. Kylie is tired. It's getting darker. And August is assuring them that they're almost there. But Kylie's also noticing that they're getting further and further away from the campsite where everyone else is at. At this point, Kylie's starting to realize that something's up with her sister and her sister's not acting normal. When they get to their campsite, it is this abandoned house in the middle of freaking nowhere. It's an abandoned mansion, okay? And the first thing that Kylie noticed is like these demonic symbols all over this abandoned mansion. But her sister is still trying to reassure her and tell her everything's okay, nothing's wrong. So now we're gonna make the snow. August told Kylie the only reason why they were staying in the abandoned mansion is because there was a storm coming and it was supposed to rain that night. So obviously Kylie is a little thrown back, but she's like not as alarmed as she regularly would be. Y'all, I don't know how much instant snow I need. Like, oh my gosh. They set up camp in the mansion, they eat their food, and this is where everything goes left. I have to put this in the bowl because like it's not like it's just gonna overflow out of here. While Kylie is eating her food, she's starting to feel extremely weird. Like she's starting to feel dizzy, she can't really speak, and she just passes out. When homegirl finally wakes back up, she's tied up and something's over her mouth. She's looking around to find her sister, and guess what? Her sister's not next to her, okay? Actually, her sister's in front of her. Her sister's in front of her with a large object. Her sister is basically telling her she like hates her and she wishes that she would just because their parents like always choose her for everything. Y'all, I don't know if this is gonna activate. I mean, it looks like it is, but August is jealous of her sister because her sister gets more attention than her. So she was planning to her, basically. So she's talking to her, and she was actually not even just planning to her. She was planning to do a demonic ritual. Hello? And she tells Kylie this while she's sitting up tied up crying. She tells her, I promise you I hate you. All this ugly type of stuff, y'all. The only thing Kylie could really do at this point is pray, because guess what? August is coming and going. She's not staying at this demonic mansion with her, and Kylie is starting to hear things. She's starting to feel things touch her when no one's there, okay? So, at this point, Kylie's boyfriend knows something is up because he hasn't heard from her, and technically she's a missing persons now. So, they go, the police, everyone is doing a mass search for her, right? So, Kylie's boyfriend is like, there's an abandoned mansion in the woods, like deep in the woods. It's probably like a mile or two away from here. I'm gonna go hike to see if she's there, right? When he finds her, she's bruised. She's, what's that word? She's not in it. Like she's been tied up for 3 days, y'all. Barely any food and water. And guess where August is at? August is soaking up all the attention that her parents has given her because their other daughter is missing. I'm gonna add some more of these green things in here because I feel like the slime is definitely eating, y'all. I don't know. I feel like I ate. So when she's found, an investigation is obviously takes place, and they find out that August, she had this whole entire thing planned. They search her room, and she was literally going to unalive her sister that same day that her boyfriend found her. So how creepy is that? Like always, when story times are sent in to me, I cannot tell y'all if these are real or these are fake. And a lot of people, I feel like they do send me story times that they find online somewhere, and that's completely okay. Like, if you just find a story online and you want me to tell it, send it to me.
This story is about my neighbor's house that is next door to my dad's house. Before the house was remodeled to be rented out, it used to be a large storage building belonging to the house to the left of the building. Rumor has it, the guy who owned the house and the storage building went to prison for murder. The house stayed vacant for a few years when I was a kid, until the new owners finally moved in. We befriended them and got to know a few things about the home. Apparently the guy was into some satanic stuff. He had sacrificed dogs and put their carcasses in his swimming pool. He would also bring girls back to the storage building and attempt to do bad things to them. They had remodeled the storage building to rent out as a house, but no one ever stayed longer than a year. I always found it odd that no one would stay until I befriended a girl that lived there. There was some kind of spirit or entity that occupied the home, and my friend and her mom named it Richard. One day, while my friend and her mom were home alone, they were both in their bedrooms when they heard the hairdryer in their bathroom going on and off repeatedly. They both thought it was each other at first, until they came out of their rooms annoyed from the noise, just to realize neither of them were in the bathroom. Her mom went into the bathroom to find the hairdryer was not even plugged in. My friend had most of the occurrences happen to only her. One night, while her boyfriend was over, she had gotten out of the shower and heard her boyfriend in her bedroom calling her name over and over, like a yell whisper. Franny, Franny. Her bedroom door was open, but the lights were off. She started to approach the room when suddenly her boyfriend walked through the front door because he had gone out to smoke. It was only them two in the house at the time. Once she saw her boyfriend, she turned white as a ghost. She ended up putting her dirty clothes back on and left the house. My friend didn't go back to her house for a few days after that. A few things also happened to me while visiting. One night, I was over alone, pet-sitting their 3 dogs, when I kept hearing a weird buzzing noise coming from my friend's mom's room. At first, I ignored it since I was watching TV, so I thought it was a TV. But my friend's dog was standing at her mom's bedroom door, frozen, almost like pointing with her body to the room. So I got up to go investigate. Once I got to the door, I could hear it again, but it was louder than a buzz now. I slowly opened the door to find an 8-foot tall ladder with a drill sitting at the very top. As my eyes met the drill, the trigger was pulled again for a short second. But that was all I needed to see before hightailing it back home. There was another instance where I had stayed over there kinda late with my friend and her boyfriend, binge watching a TV show. When my friend and her boyfriend had fallen asleep on the couch, I turned off the TV and went to lay down on the other couch since it was late. And I knew my dad had locked the front door to the house. I tossed and turned for a second because something didn't feel right in my gut, but I just summed it up to be anxiety. When I finally got comfortable and it was dead silent in the house, is when I heard it. I heard a yell whisper coming from behind the couch I was laying on. The worst part is that it was my friend's voice calling my name when I was looking straight at her, sleeping. Kylie. I immediately jumped off that couch, realizing that the couch was inches from my friend's room where she heard her name being called too. I ran home after that and made my brother unlock his window so I could sneak in. I never went back to that house after dark again. She and I ended up having a falling out a few years later, but she still lives there. I still wonder if things still happen there, or who is haunting that place? Sincerely, Kylie. I want to share a scary story that I heard from a coworker while living in Germany. We moved to Heidelberg, Germany in 2002 when my stepdad was in the US Army. The base where this took place closed down in 2013. In October 2005, which was my senior year of high school, a 12-year-old boy died during our homecoming parade. Apparently, he latched onto the back of a truck with one hand while riding and holding onto his scooter with his other hand. The driver was unaware that the boy was holding onto the back of his truck, so as he swerved, the boy lost balance and his head struck the spare tire holding. He then fell and hit his head on the curb. Paramedics took too long to arrive, so the young boy died on the scene. I didn't attend the parade, so I didn't witness what happened, but the event was devastating for the whole Army community. Fast forward to a few months later. It was the summer of 2006, and I had just graduated from high school. My mom threw a graduation party for me, and we invited some of our Hispanic friends, coworkers, and close neighbors to come hang out with us. Everyone was having a good time, listening to music, socializing, and engaging in conversation. I kind of eased my way into a small group of people who were already having a discussion. I took a seat and began to listen to my coworker Betty speak to another person, in other words, being a chismosa. Betty was a Panamanian lady who worked in the deli department of the commissary. To those who aren't aware, the commissary is a supermarket on military installations for service members and their dependents. Well, she began talking about how she tries to avoid the area where the young boy died. At that time, there were still remnants of his blood on the sidewalk and street. My curiosity got the best of me, so I asked her why. Well, she goes on to say how one night she was walking home from work. The commissary closed at 9 p.m., but she usually finished her shift around 10 p.m. She decided to take the route where the accident took place because that was the quickest route home. Even though she was walking through the neighborhood, she had a dreadful sense of loneliness. The eerie silence also added on the uneasiness she was already feeling. There were no cars driving on the streets and no other people around. When she got closer to the area where the accident took place, she said the streetlight began to flicker until the light went out. Afterwards, she felt an ominous presence and she heard footsteps following closely behind her. She didn't turn around because she got the sense that whatever was following her was otherworldly. She started to panic and hyperventilate from the fear. And in an attempt to get someone's attention, she pulled out her keys and began to shake them loud and hard, but to no avail. She didn't run due to health issues, so she just walked as fast as she could. Once she got closer to her apartment building, she turned around to look behind her, and she didn't see anyone in the surrounding area. After that ordeal, she didn't take that route home again. I could tell from the sheer terror in her voice that she was telling the truth. Although this base has since closed down, I hope the spirit of the child who lost his life is resting in peace.
He stabbed his twin sister to death while she was sleeping in her bed, but he claimed that he was sleepwalking while he did it and so wasn't responsible. I want to know if you believe him or not, so after watching this video, comment down below and let me know. I'm True Crime Caitlin, and this is the murder of Megan Elliot. This case takes place in Houston, Texas in 2021. Twins Megan and Benjamin Elliot were 17 years old, living with their parents Michael and Kathy. Megan had recently been diagnosed with autism, and so this was something new that she was navigating. She was extremely creative, she loved making art, and she would make YouTube videos of her making art. She would also draw and write poems. She was extremely creative. She was a little bit on the reserved side, and so she had quite a lot of online friends. However, in real life, her best friend was her brother Benjamin. He was almost like a protector for her. If she felt uncomfortable, he would be the person that she would go to. Benjamin was described as someone who was very soft-spoken, he was funny, he was extremely smart and wanted to get into engineering. He also enjoyed gaming, and the siblings were said to be extremely close. In general, the Elliot family were considered a very close bonded family. They enjoyed doing things together, such as going out camping, and so when Megan was murdered, this sent shockwaves of disbelief and devastation throughout the family and the community. In late September 2021, Benjamin was playing an online game when he noticed inside this game this specific knife that he became very interested in. The Elliots actually had a really big knife collection because they would go out camping, and Kathy worked for the Girl Scouts, and so when Benjamin expressed interest in this knife that he had seen on the game to his stay-at-home dad Michael realised that they already owned a knife that was extremely similar. He went and he dug it out and then gifted it to his 17-year-old son. This was an Air Force survival type knife, and just hours later, Benjamin would go on to do the unthinkable with it. At 4:41 a.m. on the 29th of September, 911 would receive a phone call from Benjamin, who was talking to them in a whispery but very clearly panicked tone. He told the operator, quote, "I just killed my sister. I thought it was a dream. I took my knife and stabbed her. Please, I don't want her to die." The operator then tells Benjamin that he has to go and wake up his parents before attempting CPR, which the operator spoke him through. When the paramedics arrived, he was still in the process of doing CPR on Megan. However, they noticed that she was already grey in colour. She had been stabbed twice in the neck. One of the wounds were 4 inches deep, and it actually severed her jugular vein, which is an injury that would have killed her within minutes. Strangely, a pillow was discovered over Megan's face. Because of the injury, it would have been expected that when Benjamin removed the knife, blood would have squirted out and splattered the walls. But that didn't happen. Blood was only found on the pillow and seeped into Megan's mattress. Benjamin was immediately put into handcuffs and placed in the back of a police car, where he sat for 3 hours until he was taken to the station for questioning. In the meantime, Kathy and Michael inside of the home were pleading with the officers to let them see Megan, to let them go to her, but the officers wouldn't let them. They couldn't. It was a crime scene. One of the first phone calls that they made would be to a family friend who also just happened to be a solicitor. During his questioning at the station, Benjamin seemed very calm and non-frantic. He did ask about Megan, how she was doing, a couple of times. However, the interrogator kept that quite close to the chest. When he did tell Benjamin that Megan didn't survive her injuries and that she had died, Benjamin replied, quote, He would admit to stabbing Megan, but stated that he was sleepwalking, and he described it as, quote, a very realistic nightmare. Benjamin Elliot would be arrested and charged with the murder of Megan Elliot. He was released to his parents on bail, and his parents were very sympathetic and supportive of him, and they assured him that they still loved him and they believed his story of him sleepwalking. They did not blame him for what had happened. Both the defense and the prosecution would consult with sleep disorder experts, and both of them had different findings. The defense's expert believed Benjamin's story of him sleepwalking. He had a history of sleepwalking, and they ran some tests on him, and it was found that his REM sleep went to a certain level. I'm not going to try and explain it because I'm not an expert and it really confused me. But this expert believed him, and the Elliot family thought that was it. They hoped and they prayed that this would be enough for the prosecution to drop the charges, but it wasn't. The prosecution's expert didn't believe Benjamin's story. He had stated that he had snapped out of his sleep. He had awoken when he felt the motion of stabbing something, and this expert said, no, that wouldn't happen. To him, that sounded more like a memory, which is something that Benjamin shouldn't have had if he was in such a deep sleep. To this expert, people who are sleepwalking only become aggressive and attack when they're provoked, which is something that Megan obviously wasn't doing because she was asleep in bed herself. Benjamin also had to unsheath the knife, and this expert believed that there was just way too many steps for it to have happened while he was sleepwalking. So Benjamin had to have gotten out of his bed, picked up the knife, unclipped the sheath, pulled the knife out of the sheath, walked to Megan's bedroom, and then stabbed her twice in an area where she would die almost immediately from her injuries. To this expert, it just didn't add up that Benjamin did all of that unknowingly, uncontrollably while he was asleep. There were other things that bothered the prosecution as well. What were the chances that this would happen on the very day that Michael gave Benjamin the knife? Benjamin claimed that he only stabbed Megan once, however there were 2 wounds, so why was he lying? When asked about the pillow over Megan's face, he said that when he snapped out of the sleepwalking, realised that he had stabbed Megan, he grabbed the pillow to put pressure on the wound to stop the bleeding, in order to try and save her. However, like I said earlier, where Megan was stabbed, blood should have sprayed out of that wound, and it didn't. It wasn't found on any of her white bedroom walls that were surrounding her bed. But why didn't it? The prosecution believed that the pillow was put over her face before the stabbing happened, almost as if it was put there to muffle a scream. They didn't like how nonchalant he seemed in the interviews. At one point he was asked where his phone was, and he replied saying, quote, the crime scene, which they thought was weird because why wouldn't he just say me house or me bedroom or in the sitting room? He said the crime scene. Upon realising that he had stabbed Megan, he didn't immediately go and wake up his parents to try and get their help. Instead he called 911, and he was almost whispering as if he didn't want to wake them up. These things just didn't make sense to the prosecution, and it didn't add up to his sleepwalking story. The only thing that they couldn't figure out was the motive. Why would Benjamin want to murder Megan when by all accounts they had a brilliant relationship? There was nothing going on between the two. But you don't need a motive in order to go to trial, and the prosecution filed their charges against Benjamin, and the trial began in February 2025. Benjamin declined a plea deal, which would have saw him serve 30 years imprisonment. A jury would deliberate for 4 hours before coming back with their verdict. They found Benjamin Elliot guilty of the murder of his twin sister, Megan Elliot. This was a unanimous verdict. The following day he was sentenced, however some of the jurors did ask the judge to be lenient with his sentencing, and so he was handed a sentence of 15 years imprisonment. This means that he will be released from prison before he is even 30 years old. So, what do you think? Did Benjamin murder Megan while he was sleepwalking, unknowingly, devastatingly not realising what he was doing? Or was that just a story to try and cover up the cold-blooded killing of his own sister? Comment down below and let me know what you think.
I'm back with another haunted school story. This story was sent in by a user, and it happened when they were in primary school. So in my last year of primary school, I had to stay back for remedial to prepare for the upcoming PSLE. I had 2 remedials, Mother Tongue, which was the first, and then Math. That was the moment I realized my bottle was empty. Now, because my Mother Tongue remedial class was at the most deserted place in the school, I had no other choice but to go to the water cooler, which was at the part of the school with the lights turned off, which was also beside a staircase. When I was walking towards the area, I kept hearing footsteps as I kept getting closer to the place. I brushed it off and thought that it was just one of my classmates going to the same venue, even though that staircase was rarely used. And mind you, this was at 3 PM and most people went back home already and only some P6s had to stay back, so that made it even worse. After I filled up my water bottle, I decided to use the staircase beside the water cooler to go back to my classroom, as that staircase was the nearest to my form class. Now as I was climbing up, the footsteps kept getting louder and louder, and when I reached level 5, I waved to my old classmate, a usually happy person who was apparently down. I brushed it off and just continued my way to class, and like a kiasu Singaporean, I turned around to stare at her again as if she was a weirdo, but this time she wasn't there. The school is only 12 years old currently, so this was a very surprising encounter, or maybe not. My school was built beside a forested area last time, which has since been replaced by HDBs. Continuing with the story, I could not believe it as the school was that new, so I turned around just to double confirm just after like 1 or 2 seconds after I turned around the first time to make sure that it was really her that I saw. So my guess is this girl actually went to find that fella who probably turned around the corner or something like that. This was when I saw a black figure standing on top of her. I think what she meant over here is that that black figure is either sitting on the shoulders of that little girl or is standing behind her. I ran back to the classroom terrified. I told all my teachers and classmates about this incident and they all treated it like a joke when it wasn't. And even that girl that I saw and I told her just didn't believe it. Now if you guys have any story to share, drop them in the link in bio and I'll check them out.
You can't make this stuff up. Might have known the story of real-life boogeyman.
He was exposing this woman in broad daylight in a supermarket car park. He kept pulling her trousers down, she was pulling them back up, and within hours she was dead. Please be warned, this is a very barbaric and truly disturbing case. It was January 2011 in New South Wales, Australia. Lynette Daly was just 33 years old and she was an Aboriginal woman from Clarence Valley. And she was an incredibly busy woman. She had 7 children. She truly had her hands full. I think one would stress me out, to be honest. But she took it all in her stride and she was looking forward to letting her hair down for something called Australia Day, which I've never heard of before. On the 26th of the month, she was heading to a beach for a camping trip with her boyfriend Adrian Atwater. It was peak summer, it was going to be a gorgeous day. Along for the ride too was Adrian's good friend Paul Morris. Like I said, it was summer, it was good vibes, and Lynette was day drinking, and personally for me that's my favourite. But sadly Lynette got to the point where she was absolutely wasted and she definitely couldn't consent to anything. Inside a supermarket that day, a worker was stopped in her tracks when she saw one of the men with Lynette literally thrusting against her. Saw him doing like sexual suggestive positions behind her, and then he followed her out to the car. He then pulled her trousers down in the car park, she pulled them back up, and he then pulled them down again. And it wasn't long before she was spotted again. This man called Brian was just minding his own business in his parked car when 2 guys rolled down their window by the side of him. Now this was Paul and Adrian. And they were like, hey, can you drop this thing down the road for us? And he was thinking, what do you mean this thing? And they pointed to Lynette. Suddenly it dawned on him, like, these men are trying to hand over this severely intoxicated woman to a stranger. It was one of the last times she was seen alive. Now, Paul and Adrian appeared to have decided to pitch a tent at 10 Mile Beach, which is a pretty isolated area. And I don't know what you guys think, but I certainly think that they did this on purpose so they would be out of prying eyes. In the back of the truck, there was already a mattress set up for them to sleep on, but that truck would serve as a slaughterhouse for Lynette. Adrian decided to SA Lynette so violently it gave her internal injuries worse than people usually get in childbirth. Sickeningly, he then invited his friend Paul to join in. Aside from the fact that this was so disturbing because she literally was so out of it, she could not consent to anything, like I said, this attack was so brutal, she was absolutely covered in blood. When I tell you she lost 2 liters of blood from a ruptured artery, this was pure evil. And the men, after doing this to her, did not decide to call an ambulance straight away, no. In fact, they first dragged her limp body down to the water, either dead or dying, so they could wash the blood off. They then decided to spend some time burning evidence, which was the mattress, the sheets, Lynette's clothing. Then they just waited hours before they called for help. They wanted to make sure she was definitely dead. And if that wasn't infuriating enough for you, they then tried to make up some bogus story to try and get away with this. They hadn't realised she was in pain, they said. 2 liters of blood. They said she just went skinny dipping and had a seizure in the sea. When Adrian was originally interviewed by police, he said to them, "Boys will be boys." If you thought you were already infuriated enough, wait until you hear the fact that they weren't prosecuted at first because of lack of evidence. Her children were left without a mother, and these animals were just allowed to walk free. It's actually only years later, when there was a serious case review, that they were finally, thankfully, put on trial. Adrian was found guilty of manslaughter and Paul of hindering a police investigation. They were both, thankfully, found guilty of aggravated SA, but not murder. Adrian got 19 years in prison and Paul got just 9. Let me know what you guys think, because I certainly don't think justice was done.
Hello and welcome back to a series of spooky stories, The Haunted Tea Spill, featuring my cute necklaces. Love them so much. I wear them literally every day. This one is new. It's a tarot card. It's the Star. They have a bunch of different ones. I know that you can't really see it, and I'm not going to get a good close-up, so just click on the link and you can see the picture and see all the various different ones. Very cute and would make a fantastic Christmas gift. Anyways, onto the story. I love your page and the stories you tell. Personally, I've had countless paranormal experiences over the years, many instances small one-off type things. However, a couple actually stand out as being truly just unexplainable stories that my kids love to have me retell to literally everyone. They've wanted me to share them online for years, and this is the first time I've actually sent one in, so here it goes. Thank you for choosing us. I was probably 13 years old, and my mom, sister, and I had moved into my grandparents' house temporarily after my mom's divorce. They have a large mid-century home that isn't really a split level, but 3 staggered stories with 3 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms on the top floor, a living room, kitchen, and dining room on the second floor. Because I wanted my own space, I had a makeshift room in the corner of the living room on the second level with just a bed on the floor. That was a mouthful. Because I wanted my own space, I had a makeshift room in the corner of the living room on the second level with just a bed on the floor, TV, and a nightstand. This living room also happened to be the trophy room, as my family are all avid hunters and have many large deer and elk mounts on the walls all around what became my bedroom. That's creepy as fuck. I have grown up in bumfuck Egypt, Oklahoma, okay, around a whole bunch of hunters, and I can never get on board with staring at a deer head on the wall. Just don't like it. One night around 3 a.m. I was laying in bed, in that stage where you're partially awake and can still hear stuff going on, but you're drifting off into sleep, when I heard this man's laugh. Ugh. It was a creepy, almost mischievous kind of laugh. I opened my eyes and saw this tall, lanky shadow figure wearing a bowler hat, reaching up and touching a very large, by the way, deer mount hanging above my nightstand. My sister's boyfriend at the time had been there that night, so naturally I assumed it was him messing with me. I literally said out loud, "D, go away," and rolled over to fall asleep. In a split second, my brain processed that that was definitely not D. He couldn't have been, as he always left our house by 10 p.m. I had already told him goodnight as he came down the stairs and told me bye on his way out. Plus, this thing had no real features to speak of, just a tall, dark shadow standing over me. Obviously, this freaked me out, but I never opened my eyes and went on to sleep. Okay. I couldn't stop thinking about it that next day and felt uneasy going to bed the following night. When I did finally manage to drift off around 3 a.m. that next night, that same deer mount that the shadow man touched came crashing down and shattered the antique glass lamp that sat on my nightstand. I woke up absolutely screaming in fear. If I had been sleeping closer to the right, it would have fell right on top of my head. And for context, full mounts can be heavy and have very long, sharp antlers. This was a 12-point white-tailed deer, just for the visual. It was a big-ass buck. It was a big motherfucker. Now, I know more about the shadow figures and the Hat Man, but in 2007 or so, I was definitely not on the internet like I am today to hear how many similar stories there are. However, I rarely hear of the Hat Man actually doing anything. I'm not sure if he was warning me or if he caused it to fall. Either way, it had hung in the same place for 10 years and has hung there in the same spot ever since and has never fallen again. Who knows, but it's burned into my memory forever as one of the creepiest things to ever happen to me. Only second to the UFO and aliens, but that's another story entirely. Where is it? Did you send it in? Because I have been dying to hear one about UFOs and aliens. Thanks for reading and keep doing what you do. I appreciate the spooky story time so much. Oh, and my name is Macy. Let me know if you want to hear the alien story. Fuck yeah, we do. I need y'all to stop asking that question. It's always a yes. Anyways, let me know what y'all think in the comments. You can rate on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being least scary, creepy, spooky, 10 being the most. If you don't want to, don't. You know? If you have a story of your own that you want to submit, you can do so on the link tree in my profile. I will see y'all at the next episode. Stay spooky, friend.
She checked into this hotel, but never checked out. Hello, true crimerers. This is the case of Elenia Caresi. Viewer discretion is advised. Elenia Caresi was born on November 29th, 1970, and she was born to this couple who is known as the Sonny and Cher of Italy. This is Albano Caresi and his wife Romina Power. She also had a little brother, and they were also the grandchildren of American actor Tyrone Power and Hispanic actress Linda Christian. Her and her brother did appear very briefly in a movie with their parents, and Elenia eventually became essentially the Vanna White of the Italian Wheel of Fortune. But the reality is she really wanted to become a novelist. She liked writing. And she was, at the time this case occurred, studying literature at King's College in London. Elenia was also someone who loved going abroad. She loved to travel to different countries, take in other countries' cultures. And in 1993, she decided to do one of these little adventures, and she would go to first South America. She then found herself in Belize, and she was there for a few months. The day after Christmas of 1993, she decided that she wanted to take a bus and go all the way up to New Orleans in Louisiana in the US. And so this is the little trip she did. She then found herself near the French Quarter doing a lot of exploring. There is obviously plenty of culture to take in there in New Orleans. And she was staying at the La Dale Hotel, which was located on 749 Charles Street near the French Quarter. And she actually ended up, I guess, getting a room with this man here, a musician, Alexander Masakala. He was 54 years old at the time, and Elenia was 23. The last time Elenia's parents and brother heard from her was about January 1st of 1994. They had a phone conversation, and she was still in New Orleans. The last time anyone can recall actually confirmed seeing Elenia was on January 6, 1994. And then after that, she fell off the face of the earth, has not been seen or heard from ever since. After her parents had not been able to get a hold of her and they could not find her, they would end up reporting her missing to authorities there in New Orleans. In the hotel room where Elenia was staying were all of her belongings. Her clothing, her wallet, her passport, the backpack with all of her stuff inside. She literally had nothing with her, but she wasn't there. The man she was staying with, Alexander Masakala, had already checked out of the room. On January 31st of 1994, Alexander is initially arrested and charged with something not related to Elenia's disappearance. There were, I guess, rape allegations pressed against him by another woman, but within a couple of weeks, the charges against him for that were dropped because there was no evidence. He was considered a person of interest as well in Elenia's disappearance, despite him saying he had nothing to do with whatever happened to her. But the police also had not a single trace of evidence to connect him to whatever may have happened to Elenia. So charges against him for her case were also never pressed. And for all anyone knows, he had nothing to do with whatever happened to her. Or maybe he did. Then a security guard would come forward a short time after she disappeared and told the authorities that he saw a young blonde woman basically jump into the Mississippi River. He saw her at a park and he approached her and said, "You can't be in the park right now because now the park is closed." And she said to him, quote, "It doesn't really matter. I belong to the river." And then she jumped into the water. Apparently, other people in a boat saw this woman in the water and she was having a hard time staying afloat, and eventually she went under. But when police just found out about this, and because police were called within a short time after this woman did that, they would end up combing the river, but they never found her. They brought in helicopters, they brought in boats, they had people go in the water physically, but nothing. It's a big river, unfortunately, so... But one of the biggest issues was the witness could not state if it was actually Elenia he saw. And it doesn't even sound like the security guard who probably saw photos of her still couldn't confirm that that was the woman he saw. I think he went to police with this because you never know, it could have been her. They don't know why Elenia would have just did that and just jumped into the river. It doesn't sound like something she really would do. She gave off zero indications that she was suicidal, but also a lot of times people don't. But whoever was in the water that day is as much of a mystery as to where Elenia actually is. To this day, Nobody knows exactly what happened to Elenia Caresi. Did she disappear on her own? Did she end her own life? Was she abducted? Was she murdered? Unfortunately, the possibilities are endless. But someone somewhere out there might know the truth about what really happened to her on that January of 1994. The passage of time has moved on, and perhaps the person who did this is no longer connected to you. Maybe you were afraid to come forward out of retaliation. It's been decades now, though. Her family deserves to bring her home, if possible. And they deserve justice if justice needs to be served. So if you are someone who knows anything about her disappearance, you are please asked to call 504-658-5315. And the case number for this one is A-36564-94. If you know something, please come forward.
This is the creepiest urban legend that actually turned out to be true. In the 1970s, a film crew was shooting an episode of The $6 Million Man inside of an old funhouse ride called Laugh in the Dark. The ride was meant to be spooky. It was lined with glowing lights and creepy looking mannequins. But people began to notice that one of these mannequins looked a little too lifelike. Whispers started circulating among carnival workers and guests, and some said that the figure looked so real that it had to be an actual body. Eventually, these rumors turned into an urban legend claiming that someone had died inside the funhouse and had been turned into a prop. But nobody took it that seriously because it was just a legend after all. Until the camera crew arrived to film the show. When one of the crew members tried to move the figure from where it hung, the arm broke off. He later said it looked like beef jerky inside, and that's when the realization hit. This wasn't just a mannequin after all. Police were called, and it was soon confirmed that the prop was actually the mummified body of a man named Elmer McCurdy. Elmer was an outlaw from Oklahoma who had died 65 years earlier. He was killed in 1911 during a shootout with law enforcement after a failed robbery. After his death, Elmer was taken to a funeral home, but when no one claimed him, the undertaker refused to bury him without payment. After preserving his body, the undertaker, disturbingly, propped his body up and displayed it inside of the funeral home with a sign that read, "The bandit who wouldn't be buried." People would pay a nickel to see Elmer this way, and even more disturbingly, they would drop the coins into his mouth as payment. His body stayed on display like this for 2 years before 2 men showed up at the funeral home claiming to be Elmer's long-lost brothers. They were actually carnival owners. They took Elmer's body and began displaying him in their sideshows. Over the decades, it was sold and traded so many times that people eventually forgot it was a real human being. By the 1960s, Elmer's body ended up with a company that supplied wax figures and props to amusement parks. And that's when Laugh in the Dark got their hands on it. A real human body that they displayed as a prop in a spooky funhouse for children.
Weird spooky Christmas story. Do you think the grandma was there with them, or was this just coincidence? This Reddit user said they've never been much of a believer in the paranormal. Because his own family does not celebrate Christmas due to religious reasons, he usually celebrates Christmas with his girlfriend and her family. In his girlfriend's bedroom, she has a small music box that sits on the top shelf of her closet that her mother had gifted her years ago. When you wind it up, it plays "We Wish You a Merry Christmas." No one ever touches it because it's stored so high up in the closet, it's just not worth the effort. After opening presents and celebrating, he and his girlfriend and his mom went upstairs to put the presents away. As they were talking, his girlfriend's mother mentioned her late mother and how much she loved Christmas and wished that she could be there with them. The moment she said it, the music box began to play. It started turning and chiming the Christmas song all by itself. No one had even been near the wardrobe, so it's not like they were putting gifts away near it and bumped it and made something move. Adding to the eeriness, that bedroom actually belonged to the grandmother. His girlfriend only moved into that room after her grandmother had passed away. His girlfriend's mom took it as a comforting sign. Her mom sending her a message letting her know that she was still with them for Christmas. He said he wasn't sure what to think, but the timing was so precise it kind of made him question his own belief. Let me know in the comments what you guys think this was, or if any of you have ever had an experience like this, send it my way. Weird spooky Christmas stories. Who was this boy standing in the doorway on Christmas Eve? This comes from someone who grew up in a small, cozy home on 20 acres of land. She said she lived there with her mom, stepdad, and 2 dogs. She said she was about 7 years old and it was Christmas Eve. This was the only night of the year that her parents let her keep the Christmas tree lit all night. She said the house was tiny, only about 850 square feet. She said from the front door you could see straight down into a small hall area, and it had doors leading into the bathroom, a bedroom, and her parents' room. She said there were unfinished basement stairs that were off to the right of the living room. She said in the middle of the night she got up to use the bathroom. She walked out of her bedroom, turned the corner, and then of course looked at the Christmas tree. She thought she saw a new toy waiting for her under it, but then hurried to the bathroom because she really needed to go. After finishing, she said she looked back at the living room, hoping to get another peek. The bathroom's door stayed open, and from the toilet, she could see the doorway between the hall and the living room. And that's when she saw him, a silhouette of a boy, about the same height and age as she was, standing in the doorway with his back turned. He was leaning into the living room on his tiptoes, holding the doorframe with one hand and a Tootsie Pop in the other. Because of the shadows and the tree lights that were behind him, his whole body was dark. Just a crisp outline of a child. She said she shuffled towards the doorway and she got close enough that had she reached out of the door, she would have been able to touch him. She was about to ask him who he was, but then he dropped back down onto his flat feet and started to run towards her. She said that's when a wave of pure dread hit her. Fear, anxiety, the sense of something terribly wrong. She says she saw part of his profile as he began to run, and he was smiling. Just before he fully faced her, her mom stepped out of the bedroom and asked her if she was okay. In that split second, she looked back towards the boy, and he was gone. The feeling of terror instantly vanished, like he was never there to begin with. Her mom just assumed she was trying to sneak a peek at the presents and then took her to bed and tucked her in. She fell asleep, woke up the next morning, and never thought about that moment again until years later. When she finally told her mom what happened, she wasn't surprised, and her mom told her strange things happened in that little house all the time. Let me know in the comments what you think this was, and if you've ever had a similar experience, send it my way.
Hello, true crimerers. This is the case of the Kansas City arson. Viewer discretion is advised. This is an aerial shot of a construction site in Kansas City, Missouri back in 1988. It was specifically November 29th, 1988. Kansas City police were called sometime a little before 4 o'clock in the morning that there was a truck on fire. And across the highway from that truck, there seemed to be another fire at a construction site. Dispatch will send out a team of firefighters to the area. They first arrive at the site where the truck is on fire. They're able to put that fire out pretty quickly. They would then head across the highway to take care of the trailer at the construction zone. They were notified that there were explosives on this site. However, at the site, you have these bunkers that are clearly labeled explosives. So the firefighters assumed that the explosives were in these bunkers and certainly not in the trailer that was on fire. So they proceed to take out the hoses and begin to get this fire taken care of. But just a minute or two after 4 o'clock in the morning, a massive explosion. The trailer they were trying to put out had blown up. It was such a massive explosion that all 6 firefighters who were there were killed instantly. Their names were Robert McKernan, James Kilbenton, Thomas Fry, Michael Oldham, Gene Hurd, and Gerald Halloran. 40 minutes after the first explosion, another one, a much larger explosion, went off. This was before anyone else was ever able to get to the site. And so if any of the firefighters were still potentially alive after the first explosion, which is probably not likely, they were certainly gone after that one. This is the site after all of the explosions. The bodies of the 6 firefighters were recovered, and an investigation immediately began into the cause of all of this. Explosives weren't necessarily supposed to be in or near that trailer, any of them. They were supposed to be in the bunkers. They were able to determine that this was definitely an arson. Someone deliberately set these fires. They likely set the truck fire in order to pull any security guards away from the site. That's just a belief, not really confirmed. Did the individuals who did this, did they know there were explosives in the trailer? What was it their intention to kill firefighters? I mean, really no one knew. It was just a complete mystery. All they knew is that the fire was set deliberately, and that fire led to the deaths of 6 firefighters. So regardless of the intentions or the beliefs of the people who did this, it doesn't matter. They still killed 6 people. The ATF who investigated this, they at one point believed that the arson may have been deliberately set by potentially disgruntled labor union workers. But they were never able to prove that or link anyone to this. And so that theory died pretty quickly. In 1989, a teenager named Brian Shepard was actually arrested and indicted with the arsons. This was based off of testimony from a jailhouse snitch. But then the jailhouse snitch's story seemed to be too unreliable, and so they dropped the charges and released Brian. And then the case goes cold. Then in 1995, a humongous break. Unsolved Mysteries airs the case. And suddenly, they are now flooded with tips. which eventually will lead to the arrests of these 5 people: Frank Shepard, Darlene Edwards, Richard Brown, Skip Shepard, and Brian Shepard, the teenager they had arrested in 1989. Witness after witness would state from various different people connected to all of these individuals, all told a very familiar story, that these people had bragged about committing the arson, that they had planned to rob the construction site. They set the truck on fire to pull the security guards away. They then set the trailer on fire because they wanted to make sure any evidence or trace of themselves wasn't left behind. All 5 of them have consistently denied having any involvement in this. They have sworn up and down their innocence. And to be fair, they were only arrested because of the testimony of, arguably a bunch of people. But there was no physical evidence that connected any of them to this case. Not a single shred. Nothing. All 5 of these individuals would go on trial. Dozens of people testified against them, and all 5 were convicted and sentenced to life in prison. Decades later, some new information would come out. The Department of Justice was asked to investigate this case because stuff had been found out that a lot of the witnesses who testified were threatened by the federal prosecutors. A lot of these statements were falsified. So the DOJ investigates it, and after a few weeks or so, they determined there was no wrongdoing in terms of the witnesses. But what the reports did include was something new, something that was not presented at the trial. The truck that was first found on fire. It didn't seem to be any kind of part of the overall case. I think they believed for some time, eventually they came to the conclusion, I should say, that the truck was just a second thing, that it wasn't connected to the trailer. Well, it turns out the pickup truck was owned by one of the security guards who worked on the site. She was one of 2 female security guards that were working that night. And they released their names, Donna Costanza and Deborah Riggs. Deborah Riggs was the one who owned the pickup truck. Both were security guards at the construction site. Both were working the night this all happened. But were they drawn away by the truck fire, or were they a part of it? Well, the defendants, who have been adamantly still saying they had nothing to do with this, are now telling prosecutors, well, there you have it. These 2 were probably involved in the arson. But in the end, these 2 women have not been prosecuted, not indicted, charged, anything. The DOJ report, according to the local courts, states that the only thing these reports do is implicate 2 additional perpetrators. Nothing that clears any of the 5 suspects. It doesn't sound like these 2 women were ever considered suspects initially, which is kind of strange considering they were on the site. And one of their trucks was the one that was on fire as essentially the decoy. Why was it all the way across the highway if she was a security guard at the construction site across the highway? Makes no sense. That being said, 4 of the 5 defendants are still in prison. Brian Shepard was resentenced in 2017 to 20 years total. He was a minor at the time of the case. There was no physical evidence again connecting him to it, just really the testimonies of people who said he confessed to it. So he was released in 2017. But at the end of all of this, 5 lives were taken horrifically. 5 men who were being heroes, who put their lives in danger every day in order to save other people. They died doing their job. These were 6 innocent men, and all of their lives were cut short in an instant. I can only sit here and hope that the prosecution got it right, that the 4 people who were still in prison for this were the guilty parties, and that they will be serving the rest of their lives in a prison cell. But if it wasn't them, having innocent people in prison is another tragedy in itself.
This should be a sign to not play hide and seek again. So this was back probably 8 years ago. Me and my sister and my brother were all playing hide and go seek, and we had just moved into the house that we in now. When we first moved into this house was considered a prayer house, and my room didn't look like how it looks now. It was all brown, and there was a chair in the middle of the room, and then upstairs was the attic, and that was also a prayer room, and it only had 1 chair in the whole entire room. So the house looked kind of eerie. The carpets was red, the walls was brown, everything was brown and red basically. So just picture that, right? So me, my brother, and my sister is playing hide and go seek, and I'm the one that has the count. So I start counting to 30 while they go hide, and I don't know where my brother went, but I just know I turned around quickly once I was done counting, and I see my sister finally run from the other room into the kitchen towards my room. When she went and ran, I ran after her, like, quick. So I run into my room, and I turn to face this way because my closet is right here. So I'm looking at the closet close, like, fast. Like, it closed so fast, like if she just went in there. So I'm like, I found you, like, I know you're in here. She not answering. So I opened the door because I have, like, sliding doors. And when I opened the door, I'm looking through, like, the hanging stuff, and she's not in here. She's not in between the coats, the sweaters. Nobody's answering me. And I'm just looking at her, and I'm like, what the fuck? Like, I literally just seen her run back here. I seen the closet door slide closed, and you're telling me that she's not in here. I was so freaked out. I think I started yelling her name, like, Maya, come out, like, that's not funny. I was just telling everybody, like, we're done playing hide and seek. Nobody understood what I was saying. Everybody kept hiding because they thought that I was just trying to get them out. But no, I was scared. Yeah, if y'all want more story times, let me know.